It's time for another Nebraska Prep Zone Report, a podcast from the World-Herald. We are sponsored today by MD West One, Nebraska's most advanced sports medicine, orthopedics, neurosurgery, and spine care, covering Greater Omaha for over 70 years. I'm your host, Jake Anderson. Joining me, as always, is the wonderful Mike Sautter. How are you doing today, Mike?
I am doing very good, Jake. How are you doing today?
I have no complaints. But
No.
I know that you do, so we're just going to go right into the breaking news that happened right before we were about to start recording. The NSAA board approved putting all 24 eligible Class A teams. Obviously, OPS is not playing this fall. They're putting all 24 teams in the football playoffs, starting the postseason in Week 9, and the NSAA staff will form a seeding committee. And again, this broke right before we were about to go on the air. So what's your initial reaction, Mike?
Kind of thought they'd end up doing something like that. They really need to do something because you have teams like Bellevue West who lost 2 games already. If they lose another one or 2 or whatever.
Lost 2 games off their schedule.
Yeah, off their schedule. So if they lose more than that, then what do you do? And wildcard points are hard and all that. So as long as they get a fair representation of kind of the whole state and of people that watch a lot of Class A football, or if it's coaches maybe or something like that, I guess I'm for it. Cool. Try something new. See if it'll work. Might as well. It's 2020 and, a lot of things are new.
What do you think the bracket will look like? Do you think it'll be a bye week for top 8 or –
Probably something like that, I would imagine. I mean, a 24-team bracket's hard. 16's obviously ideal. I'm guessing you probably give I don't know if people want to have a bye, I just don't know. Or maybe do they go kind of like they've done with 8-man in the past and play on Tuesdays and all that stuff. Just kind of mix up Tuesdays, Thursdays. Now, 8-man is going to move to Fridays this year, and that was already done. So I don't know. I guess you could give everyone a bye. Could you maybe have play-in kind of games? I guess would be a thing. That's basically giving the top 8 a bye. Bunny bracket maybe is a thing where you do 2 games with 4 teams that kind of play into the overall tournament. I don't know. It could be – there's a bunch of different options. It'll be interesting to see what the plan ends up being.
Are there any of the middle-tier teams that this could benefit, give them a boost, that it's not a normal playoff structure? In most years, the 12-seeded team would have to play the 5, and, that's probably chalking it up to a more than likely easy loss, but in this case, they're maybe getting an easier round 1 team can go on a roll.
Yeah, look at a team like Millard North, maybe something like that has started 0-3, but isn't a bad team. Their schedule's just been a gauntlet. So maybe a team like that could benefit from this kind of a scheduling or playoff type schedule. Maybe a Papillion who has a lot of really good athletes, and maybe a team like those two, maybe a Lincoln East could be a team also that could benefit from that. North Star has won a few games here now, and those kind of teams in that middle rung could certainly benefit, I think, from not having to play one of the top 4 or 5 teams in the state.
It'll be interesting to see how the committee they form, what their criteria is, how much they factor in wild card points, which was obviously how they determined the bracket years prior. How much does that still carry in? How much is it kind of, like you said, a kind of coach's poll that, okay, well, we played Millard North. Yeah, they're 0-3, but they're better than their record. It'll be really interesting to see how they do seed teams.
Well, hopefully whoever's on it does the eyeball test more than anything else, right? So that's I'm sure a lot of the transitive property of this team beat this team by this many points, so that means this other team's better and stuff will probably play into it. I don't know. Hopefully that doesn't, because you just don't know the certain situations within a week and who's healthy and who's not, and who had kids on, quarantine and stuff for a week or two, and who didn't, and what players were they if they were, and there's so many different factors that could roll into that. But we'll see. I don't know. Maybe they do like a NCAA tournament basketball selection type of thing where they have certain standards that they want to go through or meet, and then whoever's on the committee discusses. I don't know.
Yeah, again, it'll be interesting to see what happens. A couple other pieces of news to hit. First, increased fans at Metro Conference games. Officials said a family's purchasing permit now will allow 6 family members per participant, and FRC games will now be student sections.
Right. That's pretty good for home teams, right? It was weird the first couple of weeks with no real student sections at the bigger schools, or those games that I went to. It was odd. It was quiet, and that's not normal. But nothing in 2020 has been real normal. I'll be interested to see Millard South, Bellevue West is a big game, huge game, and it'll be interesting to see just how many students show up. The 100 seniors a visiting team gets, and all of that. That'll be pretty interesting to see, and feel like it's sort of back to normal, which obviously is a good thing.
What have you seen attending games this year? The sparse crowds, are they staying socially distanced?
Yeah, I didn't really see a problem with that at all. It felt like people were following the guidelines or rules that were set out at the certain places. A couple of places I've been to for games didn't have really any restrictions. So, they're doing what they're asked and doing what they're told. So it's, I guess if they have a rule in place, great, follow them. If they don't, then you don't have to follow them. It is what it is.
Do you think it's smart, having student sections and having, larger crowds, do you think it's smart?
Well, the student section thing, so I talked to a Class C1 principal this summer, and we were talking about, football and how that's going to work. And this was in June, July. And I brought up student sections, and he said, well, they're in school all day together anyway. And I'm like, yeah, that's a good point. They are students are in the same school building all day. What's the difference between that and having a student section? Not a lot. But they are close quarters, basically next to each other. That'll be interesting to see if they kind of spread them out or make them be separate, which would be hard because of big numbers and and cheering and jumping up and down, doing all those things. That'll be really, really, really hard to navigate that, I think, if they do plan on doing that. But like I said, if they're in school together already, kind of what's the difference, right?
Yeah, that's a good comparison, because I think for a lot of people who think back to their high school days, especially in the larger Omaha, Lincoln schools, what's the difference between a student section and the passing period?
Right. Not a lot.
Crowded in a small space, usually people loud, yelling in hallways, depending on the time of day, and then loud in a student section.
Right. And they should, that was my experience. And I guess my senior year, that was my experience. That's something that I said when this first kind of started and there wasn't going to be student sections. That experience that you remember of just being a student and having some school pride and cheering on your team or friends or classmates, those things are kind of important. That's the kind of mental health side of things that we don't talk about enough, in my opinion. there's kids that aren't playing, see OPS, and those kids are virtual learning and not being no social interaction and no interaction with their coaches or mentors or people that actually mean a lot to those kids and can help them in some cases even survive. So that's the part that we just I think people talk about it, but not enough. Having a student section, and that is fun. I mean, kids look forward to that. There's themes of dress up like this if you can and all that. I mean, those are the kind of fun things that high school experiences that kids need, specifically now that we've gone through however many months of trying to stay as socially distant as possible.
I agree with that, and I couldn't have put it any better myself. That will be something to remember the first time that an outbreak is tied to a student section, and there are benefits and there are drawbacks to doing it. And
right. It'll be interesting to see if they can actually trace it back to if there was something, if they're within a student section. It'd be interesting to see if it's actually traced back to that or not, or if it's school or whatever. I do know this. I mean, as far as actual football being played, Coach Freund at Omaha Westside this summer gave me a great number of statistics when he talked about just the actual physical touching and breathing on each other. If you look at linemen, there's 32 minutes in a high school game, and I think it was something like 12 and a half minutes is linemen actually like touching each other, blocking each other, or lined up next to each other as far as opposing teams are concerned. And really, on any offensive or defensive play, it usually lasts, 5 seconds or less as far as linemen blocking each other. So the actual contact isn't that great if you take the actual time into consideration, which, if you break down film and all that, that's those are good numbers that he shared with me. So it'll be in a couple of weeks to see how it all kind of shakes out. Maybe even late next week if there's a spike in cases or something like that because of this. But like I said, kids have been in school together, so it kind of should have already happened already, I think, if it was going to happen.
Yeah. And a few recruiting notes to hit. First, the big one, the recruiting dead period extended until January. So what that means is you will have a majority of kids committing sight unseen.
Yeah. It's not great. January 1, and that's just when they'll talk about it again, is January 1, not when it's going to officially be open back up. So you do have kids that can't go visit campuses, or kids that are like on the fringe, right? Like I'm talking football and basketball, I guess here. You have kids that have Division II offers or Division II schools. Some Division II schools are allowing kids to go out and or allowing, I guess, in person or kids on campus at least to do campus tours with the admissions department. I know even University of South Dakota is allowing that, and they're a Division I school. So the Division II schools that kind of can still recruit in person, and the Division I schools can't, for the majority of them. If you're a kid that's maybe, I'm talking football here, if you have, let's say you have a bunch of regional Division II schools, but the FCS schools like the Dakotas around here obviously recruit a lot, and you haven't been able to go there for a visit yet, it's hard. What I think the ultimate thing will happen is kids will end up committing because most kids and parents want to go to the highest level possible instead of the best fit. And we'll just see there's already a ton of kids transferring and not just that's not on the kids all the time either. That's a lot of the time coaches maybe misevaluated or didn't work out, and coaches tell a kid they need to find a different home or a different place to participate or play. Those situations happen all the time. I do think we'll see a much more so higher increase of transfers after the 2021 football season and 21-22 basketball season. I think we'll see that number just rise, and it's already pretty high. So I think it'll just get higher because kids just won't have the opportunity to go visit a place or see where they want to spend their next 4 years of their life, 4 or 5.
It makes sense to me because it seems like what they're trying to prevent is what we've seen on a game day in Lincoln, where there are 100 extra kids on the sidelines on a big recruiting day. It seems like they're trying to prevent events like that. But to have an overarching rule where, we're doing unofficial in-person visits like the infamous Thomas Fedone trip to Lincoln. It seems like there should be a way to find the happy medium, the middle ground, to let kids, not just do a virtual tour of their future destination. Yeah,
see, one thing I thought that they would do is maybe suspend the actual coaches going out to evaluate. Let's say go to games or go to high schools and stuff. I thought that they would kind of not do that. But in the same vein, I thought that they probably would open it up for game day unofficial visits, or maybe even only official visits, which is a far less number than unofficial visits. I thought that they might do that for football and I guess all the other sports in the fall, but clearly that didn't happen. So I thought that would probably be good. The good kind of happy medium is let kids go on official visits where the university or school pays the freight for that couple days or weekend. That seems to me would have been the smartest play. But then again, you're bringing people in from different states and different counties and different cities, and different COVID numbers are different, and different health departments are different, everywhere you go. So it does make sense to just kind of keep it as is, but there'll be an influx of transfers just because of this rule. And it stinks for the 2021 class because basketball wise, they basically lost a summer of evaluation. Football wise, same thing. And now, even volleyball and cross country and track and not only the fall sports, but the winter and spring sports use football games to bring kids in to show them around campus and, hey, this is what our school is like on a football game day, which is a big deal. And they do that often, so it kind of stinks for kids right now and their families.
Definitely. The other note we should hit here is James Carney decommitting from Miami of Ohio. That happened over the weekend. As we noted last week, he was waiting on that power conference offer. He got one from Iowa, and shortly after he decommitted. What's next for him?
Yeah, he was waiting on his ultimately, and he told me this, that he discussed with Miami that he was more than happy to go to Miami. That would have been great. But he said if he gets 2 power conference or 2 really high level offers, then that'll change his plan. And he got an offer from Boise State and Iowa, which are 2 pretty high level offers. And so that changes plan, changes mind, and kind of opens things up. I mean, really, he was a solid commit to Miami, but he wasn't nope, shutting everything down, done. That's didn't happen. So when that doesn't happen, then it kind of you kind of know the outcome, I think, eventually. I'm sure Miami's going to continue to try and recruit him, and they have a good relationship there. But, Iowa offers, no one else has yet. We'll see. I mean, he still is in, talks to Nebraska often and all that stuff. So we'll see how it ends up shaking out for him. But he clearly has some pretty good options right now.
I think it's time to preview some games. What do you think?
Sure, that's fine.
All right. The big one this weekend, number 3 Bellevue West. Again, as you said, they've already lost 2 games off their schedule, so they come in only 1-0. And they're traveling to Buell Stadium to face number 2 Millard South, 3-0. What should we expect out of this one?
Yeah, the big-time battle at Buell. You should expect, or everyone, I guess, should expect, a lot of running game from Millard South with TJ Urban and Taekwon Johnson. They're the 2 kind of leading rushers. It's going to be key. What a couple of keys to the game are: can Millard South slow down Bellevue West enough? Can their defense slow them down enough? Can Antrell Taylor, who's a really super athlete, can he defend Keegan Johnson or whoever he's lined up with? Also, as far as matchups are concerned, who does Jake Gasway is a really good linebacker for Millard South. Who does he defend? One of the 4 in the passing game, right? Who does that? Or you look at the matchups, just height, speed, size, all that stuff, and it doesn't look well at all for Millard South in the skill positions. But then when you look at the line play, that's where Millard South has an advantage. One, they have a lot more experience with Olafson coming over from Burke. That certainly helps. But they already had Bo Went, Jack Nicholson are 2 really, really good linemen that certainly can make a difference. And if it comes down to it, Millard South, Cole Lamo is a really good kicker, probably one of, if not the best in the state as far as field goal kicking and punting and stuff like that. So and as far as line play goes, Bellevue West has a really good line. Henry Nichols is a really good offensive lineman. He's probably their best one at Bellevue West, but he's young. And Millard South has an older, veteran, big line. Defensive line-wise, Caden Camise is really good and really big and powerful kid for Bellevue West, but he doesn't have a ton of experience. That's why missing or not being able to play 3 games right now for Bellevue West is big. They've only got that one, and it was in blowout fashion against Bellevue East. So we'll see. I mean, I think the key will obviously be Keegan Johnson. How much does Bellevue West use him? Maybe a running back or some wildcat, or how often do they try and get him the ball early? And if Taylor's the one defending him, how does that matchup play out? It's, when you look at it on paper, it's totally a matchup of styles, which obviously always is going to happen with Bellevue West. But can Millard South keep up as far as scoring, or can they keep the score under 20 and try and win 17-14 or 21-17 or something like that? If it gets in the 30s, it's probably not going to go well for Millard South. They got to keep the score low. They got to possess the ball, run the ball with Urban, like I said. And, Gage Stenger's had a really, really nice start to the year at receiver for Millard South, and he's a guy they needed someone to step up, and he totally has. So it'll be interesting. Like I said, if it gets in the 30s, it might go bad for Millard South. But I don't know. I mean, they're veteran. They're super experienced. They're not going to be scared of anything. In these big kind of matchup games like that, they haven't found a lot of success in this senior class. Hasn't hasn't kind of punched that ticket real hard, right? Like losing in the semis and stuff like that has happened. They beat a really good Grand Island team last year, which was a nice win. But, but beating a team like a Bellevue West, you're going to have to obviously try and keep the ball out of that offense's hands. And this might just be the team to do it.
Can always trust you for a nice in-depth breakdown, and you'll have this one covered across the board. It's your Pinnacle Bank game of the week. We'll have it covered as well with Stu Pospisil there. I'm sure plenty of photographers and video action from it. But it's not our only good game of the weekend. In Class A, we also have number 9 Creighton Prep 1-1 against number 5 Lincoln Southeast 3-0, and I think Lincoln Southeast bit of a surprise this year.
Yeah, clearly the best team in Lincoln. After a few weeks of play, they're clearly the best. Their defense is really good. Jake Applegett's really, really good. McGinnis Schneider is a solid enough quarterback. All he has to do really is just throw the ball up to Applegett and let him go get it. Good sized line play. It should be a low scoring game, I would expect. I want to say I think Southeast, obviously, I think clearly has advantage. Prep hasn't played, in 2 weeks now. It's a matter of how do you come back from being quarantined or not playing that 2 weeks and not really able to practice that much either. How does Prep respond to that? Are they fully healthy and everything like that? So I wonder, if they'll be able to match that. And they have to come out and they have to match Southeast intensity. The Southeast kids are going to play hard. They're going to be really well coached. Not saying Prep's not, but they're going to have to match that intensity. And the really cool matchup is Applegett and Alex Bullock. Two really good athletes. Bullock, a senior, obviously plays multiple positions, and same thing with Applegett. That'll be a really interesting kind of matchup within the game.
Definitely. Moving to Class B, we have number 2 Bennington 3-0 against number 6 Omaha Skutt 2-1. Skutt kind of feels like a bit of an underdog coming in here, which feels weird to say.
Just because they've lost one game. To a really good Waverly team, I think. So that's a huge game. Obviously, I think for just confidence for Bennington. Bennington hasn't won these kind of big games in recent years. I would expect a lot of eyeballs will be seeing how that game plays out. B is such a mess, I guess, at the top. I think they're going to all end up beating each other, and everyone's going to have one or two maybe losses. And, Tyler LeClaire is back. He's fully healthy. He's a tremendous athlete. Class B has a lot of really good athletes, and he's right up there. If he's not the best, he's one of the best overall athletes. A running back, linebacker, can play some safety and defend the pass as well. So him, and this should be the Skutt game day debut of Sam Scott after transferring over from Omaha North. This should be the game. He didn't play against Waverly and didn't play last week, I think, against Skutt, or if he did, it was very minimal. Or against Gross, sorry. Those two matching up that's fun because those two are really good athletes. And that's a neat little matchup kind of inside the game. Skutt lost that one to Waverly, had a bunch of new faces and guys out and all of that. And Waverly is a good team and plays really hard. And that Bennington game, it'll be interesting to see that LeClaire-Scott kind of matchup is one that I kind of have my eye on, I guess. And can Skutt slow down a pretty solid offense? they threw the ball around a ton last year at Bennington. New coach this year, kind of same stuff, not changing a whole lot, but relying on LeClaire a bunch. Games at Scott, not like, any of that stuff matters that much as far as home and away because the crowd size is so small. But that one's an interesting kind of game to read because you have really good athletes, and this is kind of like Bennington can kind of put a stamp on, hey, we belong in this conversation of the best in Class B because there's a lot of them, and they can put that stamp on it if they can get that win.
And another matchup that could kind of go toward the best of Class B, Waverly, which we previously talked about, comes in 2-1, number 5 in Stu's rankings against number 7 Grand Island Northwest, also 2-1. This feels like another one of those games, teams beating up on each other, and at the end of the year we look back and they've all beaten each other, and
Yeah, I think it's a matchup kind of styles. Grand Island Northwest likes to spread it out, but they're really good in the run game in that kind of spread-ish offense. Waverly just wants to line up and run it down your throat. And it feels like, Waverly's going to be pretty mad after losing to Elkhorn, or, they beat Scott and then they lose to Elkhorn the week later. Now they go to Northwest. Northwest has some really good linebackers. They're going to have to play great. Guys like Aiden Davies is going to have a huge game in order for them to be able to compete and win that game. Northwest lost to Bennington in the first game and kind of got handled a little bit in that. So they got to be able to stop the run, and that didn't go well against Bennington in the first game for Northwest. But Coach Stein's a really good coach. Their staff's really good. Maybe got a couple guys back that are athletes that can help with some depth. But it's going to be a challenge, really tough challenge for Northwest, I think.
Definitely. And we'll be back next week with some more news and notes and another preview of a good slate of games. Until next time, thanks for listening.
As the official team doctors for high school and college teams across Greater Omaha, MD West One Sports Med Doctors can get you back into the game stronger than ever. Meet the Sports Med team at mdwest1.com or call 402-390-4111.